Fight back. Fight back or get out of the way and let someone else do it. I guarantee you
certainly don't do what you're doing, which is you're giving ICE agents there a fucking vacation.
You tear down the house, then you put up the rent. You pocket the cash, and you crush all dissent.
Hello and welcome to the Red Diaper Pill, episode 41. This is Monday, June 1st, 2025, and we are a podcast about art, culture, history, politics, technology, and parenting from a left perspective, and my name is Simone.
And I'm John Paul. I'm in trouble for being on my phone.
Yeah.
We're going to try and recover.
The only reason I started this podcast was to keep him off his phone for a conversation or two.
And it worked for almost 40 episodes.
Almost 40 episodes. So this will be our last podcast.
back to that joke. Back to episode 3.
Yeah. John Paul's on his phone.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
John Paul's on his phone.
I'm just kidding. Look. That's barely in arm's reach.
All right, well, how was your week?
Busy.
Yeah, no kidding. It was pretty busy.
I'm burnt out. Need a vacation. I'm going to stay in a hotel for 3 days by myself. Refresh.
Gonna be no vacation. We have a couple of headlines to do.
Okay.
We have...
Are they horrible?
Yeah, they're horrible. The DOJ has opened a criminal investigation into E. Jean Carroll. The Justice Department has launched a criminal investigation into E. Jean Carroll, the former magazine columnist who successfully sued Donald Trump for sexual assault and defamation. The investigation centers on whether Carroll committed perjury in a 2022 deposition when she stated her lawsuit received no outside funding, a claim contradicted by a later disclosure that billionaires Reid Hoffman had paid some of her legal fees. The investigation is being run out of the federal prosecutor's office in Chicago, where Hoffman's nonprofit, American Future Republic, is headquartered. Carroll was awarded $5 million in 2023 after finding Trump liable for sexually abusing her. These are civil trials. Mm-hmm. And a second jury ordered Trump to pay $83 million in 2024. And they are going after... Well, they're going after her for perjury, but they're also targeting this nonprofit of Hoffman's.
Yeah. Yeah, because it probably was politically motivated on his part to this. So this is the lawfare stuff. This is horrifying, right? Like, this is a person who he almost certainly sexually assaulted, who embarrassed him, right, by bringing this up and forcing him to contend with it. And then every time he lied about her in public, which is what he wants to do, is he wants to lie about things to make them seem like a non-issue. And then his supporters believe it. And every time he did that, she'd sue him and win more money, right? So she punished him for his typical tactic. Mm-hmm. So I think the interesting thing on top of that, though, is the lawfare stuff that he's worried about from during Biden's term, to some extent, was true. Not because he wasn't guilty of all this stuff. Not even because he wasn't guilty of this stuff in a way that other presidents had never been guilty of, but because there was this long-standing handshake agreement that presidents can do whatever they want, at least legally and financially, that they can pay a price, like, politically in the public sphere and maybe be forced to resign, but no one's ever going to jail about this. And everyone understood that there was myriad crimes committed by all these people, mm-hmm. up to and including Obama, that they had to be insulated from the consequences of, because their job was to facilitate empire, not to worry about, like, legal technicalities, right? So the Democrats, I think, inherited this issue, which is a huge part of their base that wanted to see Trump pay for his crimes, a reckoning with what it meant to force a former president to face legal accountability for the decisions that they had done, both as president and beforehand. And also, like, what that would mean for the precedent going forward, right? And because they couldn't just say, here's a guilty man that we need to prosecute because he's guilty, it had to be a political decision, which meant that de facto it's lawfare. It had to be politically motivated, whether they did it or not. They couldn't just, like, a normal legal system is, when the justice system decides that there's ample evidence this person is guilty of a crime, they prosecute for that crime. There's no political, like, hand-wringing about it or discretion about it. But that's not the world we live in. And they did go after him. I think that, this Hoffman guy probably wanted to fund this because he knew that probably that she had been sexually assaulted, and also because he knew it would embarrass Trump. So the Trump is now going to use the power he has to get back at all these people, and has been very explicitly and very directly, without much, if even like a fig leaf, right? And it has exposed what I think is one of the most obvious shortcomings of the founding documents of this country, which is that the executive branch controls the prosecutorial arm of the state, because there's nothing anyone can do about it. Like the judiciary has stopped him to some extent, and it's not well publicized because I think they don't want to make a big deal of it, but the judiciary has made it very difficult for him to actually punish his political enemies to the degree that he'd like to. But all that takes is flipping some of those judges, and whoever the president is can essentially legally hurt anyone that they are see as a political enemy.
Well, but there is a slush fund that they can get rewards back.
That's true.
So once E. Jean Carroll is wronged by the lawfare, she can apply for the January 6th slush fund.
I'm sure. And all the people who are on that board that were appointed by Trump, I'm sure, will be very sympathetic to her.
We'll just go back and forth between doing lawfare and paying out of slush funds.
Right. I mean, the liberal answer is going to be, we're going to go back to the days where there was restraint, right?
Oh, yeah.
That the person who's the president has to show restraint, which is
supposed to follow the nice rules of civility, right. And
yeah, that's not checks and balances. If the system is set up in such a way that the individual personality of the person who's elected to one office matters to keep the whole system running, then it's a terrible, stupid system.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it is always, all this stuff is always going to be political. It'll never be technocratic. But it's, I guess this is dispelling the mythology that there's an independent Department of Justice and an independent judiciary that's apolitical, that's exposing all of that, which I guess is a good thing. But in the meantime, we have to watch this one. Like, there's been a lot of these that are pretty horrifying. This one, I think, is really sick.
Because of the overstepping?
Because he's basically punishing a woman that he sexually assaulted for making him face any kind of public accountability over it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I mean, yeah, it just seems so business as usual for him.
And the only reason he can do that is because he has institutional power, right?
Yeah. I don't know. It seems, I know that you find this to be particularly horrifying. I'm like, oh, of course. Of course that's happening. I don't know. It just feels so boring, but terrible, but also boring. Because it's like, it's so predictable, and it's just part of this long continuation of things like this. But
I guess, I mean, it is not different in kind than his other's behavior.
No. Okay, so we're going to do a longer rundown of what's happening in Delaney Hall in Newark, New Jersey. Okay, so Delaney Hall is a immigrant detention center run by ICE and the private prison group GEO. And there have been protests outside Delaney Hall for months and months. So that's nothing new. In fact, when we were on our baby moon back last May, remember our baby moon?
Mm-hmm.
When we went 10 miles down the road to a hotel.
Yeah.
Remember how the mayor of Newark was like arrested, detained because he wasn't arrested legally outside this detention center. So
yes, for trying to go inspect it. Yeah.
Yes. So this is the same one, and it has had activity outside of it the whole time. There have been 3 letters that have been sent from inmates within the center out, like stating their demands and stating the conditions, which are horrifying. And the latest letter, Don't Give Up, a letter from Delaney Hall, was released on May 26th, and they began a hunger and labor strike at that time. So, and they're like identifying things like their food contains worms. There's people are really sick. They're not getting medical care. It takes 2 weeks. You ask for medical care. It takes 2 weeks to get processed to get medical care. They've always been saying that they need to be released immediately because they're being held in a non-legal way, and they're being like coerced into signing like self-deport orders. They're being forced to work for $1 a day in some cases. I'm seeing $1 a day and $1 an hour reported, but either way, that's not enough. So they started this hunger and labor strike about 12 days ago now. And then there's been corresponding uptick in protests outside Delaney Hall in solidarity of the labor strike. This has been like woefully undercovered by mainstream media, but last week there was quite a few like big clashes between masked ICE agents and protesters. So they had protesters really pretty close to Delaney Hall, which is up against like a thoroughfare in an industrial area where there's tons of tractor trailers going by. And the ICE agents were like deploying chemical gases and pushing people into traffic and beating people up and pulling people out of the crowds. So there's been like a little bit of coverage, or like my Instagram feed has seen a lot of videos of protesters getting like beat up by these ICE agents. So then this weekend, the governor of New Jersey, who has herself called for the detention center to be closed, had a press conference in which she said, "We cannot give ICE any pretext to be sending ICE agents into our streets." Basically, she felt as if, I guess, that she felt either because she was explicitly threatened with this or whatever, that they were going to have like a big uptick in ICE presence with those protesters. And so she decided to comply in advance and create a free speech zone a half a mile around the Delaney Hall, and sent in the state police to enforce the free speech zone.
The free speech zone being a zone where you're not allowed to have free speech?
The free speech zone is the zone where you're allowed to have free speech, but in order to have the zone, you have to have the zone where you can't have free speech. So they created the no free speech zone and then a free speech zone.
I mean, it's so Orwellian. We cannot fight. The best way to fight back against ICE is to not fight back against ICE. And the best way to have free speech is to have a zone where the police will not let you go.
Yes. So, I mean, just her speaking, just this couple sentences about that we can't give them the pretext is like worth listening to, because it is so ridiculous. It's so absurd. It's like, oh, ICE is going to hurt us. We can't let ICE have any reason to come do bad things. Therefore, we are going to make sure the state police do it first.
You know, I don't recall seeing any violence from protesters. I'd have to look back. I haven't tracked it as closely as you have, but certainly when it came on my radar was, I believe, around Monday evening, if that's what you recall.
And ICE agents arrived on Monday
afternoon. And when
afternoon.
ICE agents came and started to interact with the protesters, which is something that we tracked and we're watching very closely. And it seemed to be escalating to the point where we were seeing batons used and other things that were not in line with how we felt was appropriate for, at that time, the crowd control. So at that time, we were also concerned that there would be a surge of ICE, and we were being told that. So we took measures to make sure that didn't happen.
Because later that night, Saturday night, around 9:00, the state police, who were in riot gear, they started to push the protesters back. I guess expanding the non-free speech zone and constricting the free speech zone. So,
pretty soon that non-free speech zone will just eclipse the entire United States.
So
push you all the way to the ocean.
Yeah, riot gear police now brutalizing protesters instead of ICE agents brutalizing protesters. Protesters and New Jersey State Police clashed near Delaney Hall not long after 9 p.m. There's also been a curfew now imposed by the New York mayor, Ross Baraka. So the deadline to get off the streets encompassed a half-mile radius around the ICE detention facility where people have been protesting. The curfew is expected to continue each night until 6 a.m., then until the next day, until further notice. State police are maintaining the perimeter around Delaney Hall until the curfew is lifted. As the curfew went into effect Sunday night, a warning was issued to the protesters who had gathered outside the zone. 13 minutes later, state police in riot gear rushed toward the crowd. Officers on horses came in from the other side, surrounding the crowd and herding them away. Video shows officers hauling people away in zip ties. According to the New Jersey Attorney General Jennifer Davenport, quote, a group of individuals who had come to the protest armed with helmets, shields, and gas masks deliberately refused to comply with repeated orders to leave the area and were arrested. These people were armed with, let me repeat this, helmets, shields, and gas masks. What do you notice about those items?
They're defensive.
They're defensive because the use of gas in the protesters the ICE agents were using, it was so diffused in the area that press people were covering it. Were going to hotels first to wash off because they did not want to walk into their house with small children.
Oh my God. Like, I would like to see how you use a gas mask offensively. I guess because you can go.
I guess you can headbutt.
This is even worse than like Cuba's threatening us by preparing for our invasion.
So this is Sunday night. A protester said they were shot with rubber bullets and some sort of canister was shot at them towards their legs and chest. They're claiming that they were doing some of this clearing of protesters so they could resume family visits for the inmates, which is such a BS PR line.
Jesus.
So that was Saturday night and Sunday night. So that was clashing with the cops, because I'm so glad the governor is making sure that the protesters are clashing with the cops, not ICE. ICE is just can hang out in the half a mile, no speech zone and like spectate.
Yeah, because they have no idea what they're doing. Because they're a bunch of cowboys who've not had any training, and the police actually know how to have done drills on how to clear an area. So
they were both doing basically the same thing. However,
yeah, I mean they were doing it to the same level of escalation, but probably ICE was doing it stupidly.
So now instead of having the incompetent crowd clearers, we have the competent crowd clearers.
That's right.
Great.
Done. Which is perfect. That's the tagline for the Democratic Party. Why have the incompetent crowd clearer when you can have the competent crowd clearer? So I think it's very interesting that the attempt here by the liberals is to say we're actually helping you, right? We agree with you. We all agree that this thing should be closed. It's very easy and free to say that. This is happening in your state. It's very easy to say, "Oh, I think it should be closed." Anyway, I'm gonna go to my fancy dinner and meet with my donors.
Well, speaking of that, can I add one piece of context?
Yes, please.
Interestingly, the governor decided to use the state police after it was threatened that they were going to close Newark International Airport to international arrivals in the midst of the FIFA World Cup starting.
Yeah.
So I don't know if she was explicitly or implicitly threatened, but I can tell you one thing. They are very worried about the federal government taking away their tourist FIFA money.
Yeah, which will make their donors very, very angry. So this is what
because their donors love soccer. That's why. Yeah,
no, it's the love of the sport. It has nothing to do with all the money that they've already decided that is in their pocket. This is what we mean when we say liberals facilitate the rise of fascism. It doesn't matter that she prefers, right, that the ICE facility isn't there. It doesn't matter if she prefers the protesters have freedom of speech. What matters is that she is in position herself such that she's willing to be a facilitator of a fascist crackdown, right? And we're going to be told this narrative. And Ross Baraka's people are doing the same thing of like, no, we have a really good plan to stop all this. You all people need to get out of the way, stop making it loud, and you're actually like the intensity with which you're approaching this problem actually makes it worse.
And you're wearing helmets.
You cannot have that conversation seriously post Minneapolis, because we have seen very clearly what it looks like to effectively stand up to this, right? And we don't need this lesson. We already know what this looks like because we did the civil rights movement with a bunch of liberal politicians saying, wait, any day we're going to fix this. And a bunch of militant people refusing, forcing themselves to be arrested on buses, forcing themselves to be arrested at lunch counters, and so on, right? Marching where they were told not to march, marching where they were told that they were going to make things worse by creating a violent confrontation. That's what Selmed was. That's what we celebrate, right? Ross Baraka claims to be in that tradition, but he is now a liberal, technocratic facilitator of fascism. So his job is to find a way to maintain his appearance of progressiveness while facilitating an end to the movement, which is the only thing that could possibly stop this machine. That's what all of these people have signed up to do. And I would include your boy Zoran Mamdani in this, right? If the same situation arises in New York City, he's going to do exactly the same thing.
May I give you some more fodder?
Yes, please make me angrier.
So two things. One is I was actually listening to Democracy Now! And they had a relatively well-respected journalist, labor journalist, and he was really trying to spin this towards what these libs are saying, which is that it's a public safety issue. When, whenever there's a public safety issue, I find it's best to send in cops in riot gear.
Folks who are well-intentioned, who see this, what happened in Minneapolis with the assassination of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, they come there ready to engage with the helmet on, gas mask. And what they may not know is that there's a very fragile humanitarian effort, which, of course, I'm not surprised your reporter captured with Sally there, where they were, when things are calm, individuals are released who have been detained or imprisoned. And it's so important that they be encircled by the beloved community, not by a pool of reporters or protesters.
It sounds like that facility is a public health issue.
Yeah.
Sounds like they're torturing people inside there. They should probably be more worried about that issue.
So it's a concentration camp and they're torturing people. And what we're concerned about now is that there's protesters outside. And so I was hearing this guy spin it like there's a whole mutual aid apparatus that has in these white tents outside. So when inmates do get released, they can get support. And now that's being made more vulnerable by these protesters. And it's like, I'm sorry, eyes on the prize here.
Yeah, what do you think the people inside the facility prefer what people do?
We need to shut it down. So then now we're getting this narrative that there's outsiders coming into the city. The sort of the outside protester narrative.
Sure, yeah.
Which I think we should talk about. Because I think that there's a instinct to be like, no, there's not outsiders. Those are the people. But there are outsiders. There's people in political solidarity who are going to show up.
Right.
And cool, man. Good job.
Yeah.
Like, are there...
Some reason standing up to fascism and concentration camps, you cannot have that position, a legitimate position on that, unless you have lived your entire life within a 2-mile radius, right? Because everyone in the facility grew up in a 2-mile radius, right? It's not a national or international problem. It's a local problem.
Yeah,
that only local people are allowed to weigh in.
This is a YIMBY situation. Yes, in my backyard only. So
who's allowed to care about fascism?
Who's allowed to care? Right. Now, are there people that are making adventurous political decisions that I might not agree with? Probably. Are there provocateurs? Are there undercover cops who are probably doing terrible things? Yes, everyone on the ground should be aware of that. You should be organizing with some political discipline and thoughtfulness. And you listen to these liberals who are like Baraka, who's really wants to have real cred. Basically be like, well, it's a public safety issue, so we've therefore made it impossible for you to protest. And we're going to enforce
that by hurting you and hitting you with a chemical weapon.
Your enemy are the people who are coming from other cities and towns to support you and the people who are dying inside. Not being fed food that's edible, not being given medical care, being injured, being pepper sprayed in the face while in a detention center.
Yeah. At some point in the next 25 years, you're going to find yourself having an argument about the sheer number of people who died during this system, and having someone tell you that's not true, and having a debate about the number of shoes, right? Mm-hmm. that existed, but we don't know where the people are. Yep. And they're going to say, no, that can't be that number of people died. There is a number of people dying right now that is being unreported that is astronomically higher than you think it is.
Mm-hmm. So there was a counter protest that came out on Sunday, counter to the
They all live in Newark, though, so protest. It's okay.
Yeah, the local Newark fascists came on out. And the governor was asked about this.
No, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to have to go take a walk.
Yesterday, we saw the New Jersey State Police arrive, and a lot of us who have been on the scene saw them setting up with the horses, with their riot gear, and it looked as if they were ready to respond to an escalation. But today, New Jersey State Police are at Delaney Hall, and as you mentioned yesterday during your briefing, you were preparing for the counter-protesters. The counter-protest was today, and when the Proud Boys arrived at Delaney Hall, New Jersey State Police were not prepared with riot gear or horses. They were standing in front of the Delaney Hall side entrance where ICE agents have been brutalizing protesters for the last several nights. So my question is, why did NJ State Police arrive yesterday prepared to respond to a riot when there were no counter-protesters? New Jersey State Police arrived ready, seemingly, to respond to an escalation that some people would say began with the police and not with the protesters.
Pulling things together remarkably quickly to make sure that there was no pretextual reason for ICE to put their people on the ground. We had put them off for at least one night, but we did not have a lot of time, and we knew that they were ready to engage in a way and clear out protesters. having seen what that looks like in other states, very violent techniques, no area for people to protest, then counter people coming in from all over the country and creating really a situation that's very dangerous for everyone. At that time, we decided to move in to make sure that ICE was not doing any of that and to make a commitment to keeping the public safe.
So his question was, if you knew the counter protest was coming on Sunday because you'd briefed us on it, why did your cops show up Saturday night in riot gear and then showed up on Sunday not in riot gear and then put the riot gear back on Sunday night when the counter protesters were gone? And she didn't answer the question at all. But
No.
So when the Proud Boys showed up, the police presence was, I don't know, friendly, normal, free speech zone?
Yeah, it's it's even more of a non-free speech zone because it's now occupied by fascists. I mean, what is there to say?
I mean, what do you...
That's what a liberal is. A liberal is someone who uses the riot gear to attack you for your own good and allows the fascists to march through unmolested. I think what you said is about the adventurism is an interesting question, which is you can imagine a situation which would be better than one that we have now, where there is a large-scale coordination of efforts, right?
Like an organized and confident left.
Where you can say, this is not the battle that we can win right now. Let's choose this battle instead, right? Let's prepare for the next battle by doing these things right now. Those are important conversations to have, and it's not that the protesters are having that conversation and ending up with the wrong answer. That conversation is impossible in the absence of an organized left. There is no left leadership that can facilitate that conversation, that can gather information, that can pass down recommendations or anything like that. There's nothing that the working classes recognize as a body that has the authority to coordinate and collaborate efforts like that. So in the absence of that, people should just they should be militant. They should be courageous, right? They should fight back.
They should talk to their neighbors and learn about, you don't have to have, yes, a fully formed organized left is better. But if you're in communication with the people in your community, if you're being responsive to what your neighbors say they want and need, or, that is not nothing.
Yeah.
That is it. That's the word.
I don't even think it's possible for an individual or a group of individuals to be adventurous. Adventurous is a quality of an organization that has made the wrong call about what the moment calls for.
Well, an individual can be...
They can be a terrorist.
Yes.
But they can't be adventurous because that requires... I think that whole discourse only makes sense in the context of here's a group of people deciding to do a thing, and the way that they have judged the proper thing to do was incorrect.
Yeah.
And find that out after the fact. What I will say, though, is that there are multiple politicians, including Ross Baraka, who have attempted to speak in the language of coordinating the left broadly's response to this. And this is why elected politicians are so dangerous, because he will say, I have institutional authority and I have political legitimacy because of the number of people that voted for me. And therefore I can say, we have decided that we are not going to fight back in this particular way this time because we understand the reaction will be worse, right? So we're actually making it worse with this tactic, and we should change to a different tactic. He does not care about that. He cares about his political career. He has no ability to speak about any of these things in a way that's actually taking seriously what are the actual goals of this movement, right? And again, ditto for this governor. Yeah. All these social democrats, they all are worried. They're balancing their political base's instincts with their own political career. They're not balancing what is the positives we'll get out of this and what are the negatives we'll get out of this. They can't have that thought.
So the calculation could be, this is sort of what, you're right, they can't do it. But she was threatened. Clearly, the feds threatened her with an ICE search.
Right.
Absolutely. Probably threatened with an ICE search and closing the airport, right? And she is making some calculations where she's like, well, that's not worth it. But let's just do this for a second. You have the feds threatening states and cities with federal extra legal invasion.
Yeah.
Okay. There aren't that many ICE agents. There's probably more New Jersey state troopers.
Yeah.
So there's a calculation here where you say, fuck the free speech zone. We're going to put the state troopers around the protesters and they can come on in here. Now You could get your little battle map and your little figures, and you could decide that you have more state police than ICE yahoos, and you could actually say we're not going to have the feds come tell us how to brutalize our people.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that never enters anyone's minds, but like you're right, and from a tactical point of view or a strategy point of view, that could be the decision. But if you have these like figureheads who are making the political decisions for you, they will every single time give in.
Yeah. And the important thing is like the response to this is Ras Baraka, you are a servant of a movement. You're not the spokesman for the movement, and you don't get to make these decisions. Now, you want to facilitate a conversation with all of Newark about what's the best way to shut down Delaney Hall. Just open up a town hall and let people go and speak their mind about it. But you're handing down a decision that this hurts your white tents that are only affecting the 1% of people who get out of there. You want to be useful? Demand right now that you can go in there with camera crews. You want to have a concentration camp in my city? We demand access immediately.
So the one of the demands of the people in there is they want an audience with the governor. It's
right.
like that should be the only
every
thing
day
she's
she should
doing.
be there.
That's the only. She should surround herself with state troopers as she walks in there every day.
And in fact, what Ras Baraka should be doing is saying, if you voted for me, get your ass down there. Right? We're closing this thing down. And we like. They're going to threaten you, right? So what do? When fascists threaten you, you appease them, right? Because that always works. They stop escalating when you appease them.
Dear fascists, please don't use your own police force. We'll let you borrow ours.
Right. And we have...
it costs them nothing to borrow your police force. Make it cost them something.
Make it cost them something. Or at least exchange something. But that's what the Trump administration... Their goal here is to make this bipartisan. And the way you make it bipartisan is your head is getting beaten in, not by ICE, which is some right-wing crazy thing that the federal government has, but also by the liberal Democrats that control the police in your state. So don't complain to me. This is a bipartisan effort, right? So they've achieved what they got. And what did Ras Baraka get out of this? What did the governor of New Jersey get out of this? They got nothing. And we have Minneapolis, and now we have Iran showing that if you say to these people, you have a demonstration that if you stand up to these people, they're going to make a big deal about punishing you. But then eventually they'll realize that if you cannot be cowed and intimidated, they're going to move on to someone else. They're bullies.
It's actually like the attorney general that they're demanding an audience with. But either way, the attorney general and the governor, they should all like... You're right.
Yeah, I heard there's people in the state who are eating worms in a government facility. Open it up right now.
Yeah, you could say like hold the town hall and figure out what to do, but you know what to do. There's a set of demands, and you're already saying that this is an unacceptable set of circumstances. So use your state apparatus to get yourself in the fucking building.
Yeah. Fight back or get out of the way and let someone else do it. I guarantee you
certainly don't do what you're doing, which is you're giving ICE agents there a fucking vacation. You're literally saying, please don't get off your asses. We will bring you some lemonade. We'll create a free speech zone. We'll give our guys overtime. We'll use our riot gear. We'll use our chemical weapons. We'd hate for you to go into your stockpile of chemical weapons. You might need those in another city. I mean, it's absurd, which is why I was particularly mad by this Democracy Now! Piece I listened to, because this is not just like, the lib governor of New Jersey. I don't expect much from her, but like a labor journalist who does like left-wing journalism and radio journalism is
because they think they're the serious.
And he goes, Baraka will know that he's not instilling a curfew unless it really is needed. What do you mean?
Yeah. What? Prove that to me. This is a classic, like, they prefer an unjust peace over justice, right? You can have justice, you can have peace. This is unjust peace. They want law and order first. Their job is to deliver stability to their shareholders. Whether or not they understand that, whether or not they accept that, that is their role in the world. And that's what they're doing, is that we need to make sure that we need to prevent Minneapolis. Not because Minneapolis was bad for the anti-fascist movement. Not because it was bad for immigrants, but because it was bad for the political establishment and their actual lords and masters. This is not like an abstract conversation about what the morally right way to like navigate this situation is. Like these battles will determine whether your children grow up in a fascist society or not. I mean that quite literally. that if these people get what they want, and they're going to be given what they want by these liberal politicians, if they get what they want, your kids will grow up in a fascist society where it is normalized to brutalize people, where it's normalized to separate people on race and gender, where your rights for self-expression and right to protest and all of these things are taken off the table, and that you're looking at significant like jail time for dissenting from watching like the most crooked, corrupt people you've ever seen in your life steal and plunder from you. Not to mention that your like work conditions will deteriorate, your pay will deteriorate, your quality of life will deteriorate. That's the world that we will live in unless these battles are won today.
So along those lines, I completely agree. And we were at a birthday party this weekend, and we were sort of talking about, oh, there's not another Minneapolis happening, right? Like we had this like these ice surge, and there's this sort of activity around it, and it's been quiet. And I brought up Delaney Hall, and the folks there did not know about what's going on with Delaney Hall. I think it's gotten a little bit more coverage in the last 48 hours because of the governor's actions. There won't be another Minneapolis until they're well on the way of completely winning, because Minneapolis was a political, not failure for them, but a flashpoint that showed that there's more fight than they wanted.
Yeah. Over the objections of the liberal politicians.
Yes, because it would be because of the particularities of activists and how activists are trained in Minneapolis. It also created immediate playbooks for activists everywhere, and the fascists don't want that, so they pulled way back. And it's a very different approach. This Delaney Hall situation is the next version of the Minneapolis, because you have people inside the concentration camps organizing, and you have external people in solidarity with them organizing in solidarity. People are protesting because the people inside have asked them to. And you have a well enough connected left-ish that, yes, it is getting people to go down there in solidarity, and that is creating enough heat that ICE wants it shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the next, like, you don't wait for the next Minneapolis. It's not going to happen the same way over and over again. It's much better for them for it to happen in small flashpoints or completely controlled flashpoints where the liberal governor shuts it down so fast you don't even know it's happened.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing is, like, these detention centers are not like little jails with a few people in them. These are people who were kidnapped from their families months and months ago and have not been given any of the rights that they should have, obviously, as humans, but any of the legal rights they are granted in this country. The people who work with them, the lawyers and the social workers and stuff, everyone's blown away about how absolutely broken the system is. This is like what happens when you just build concentration camps and ship all the Jews into them. Like, these are not precedented situations, and it's completely underreported the types of abuses, the violence, the people dying of ailments, the people dying of treatable injuries, completely underreported, will only get worse as time goes on. Not to mention the number of people being kidnapped off the streets is going up, not down. So that's more and more and more people. Third point is, we have another story now of activists who were at protests at ICE detention centers that have now been sentenced to jail. So we had the one at Texas that we covered. Now there's 3 Spokane residents, including a military combat veteran, were convicted on Thursday by a federal jury on conspiracy charges under a Civil War era law for their roles at a June protest attempting to block ICE from transporting Venezuelan immigrants into the detention facility. So these protests happening at the detention facilities are critical points of like political pressure against ICE and also political pressure back against protesters, and they will continue to be. That's not a coincidence.
Yeah, and that's the escalation, is the use of the state political power to criminalize dissent is fascism, and it's building. What you said about Minneapolis, like, what they want is bold fascist action with anemic response, right? So the job of the liberals is to try and set up an anemic response. And Minneapolis is a perfect example of this, is if that battle is won by ICE and the administration, that happens in every single city in the United States, one after the other. And that's clearly what they were set up to do. If Bovino and Nome emerge from Minneapolis as heroes because the entire city is cowed, everyone's afraid, or everyone says, look, they're after the Somalis, they're not after me, so who gives a shit? They go to city after city after city, right? But because people there were willing to put something on the line and really stand up for this, that didn't happen, right? They now have to do it the much less fascist way, much more liberal way, which is the sneaky. They don't want sneaky. They want a theater of cruelty for their base to lap up, but they can't get that because there's too much resistance.
Right.
Um,
Which is why we'll see another Minneapolis when it's way too late.
Right. The other thing, too, is like what you said about like what the people inside want. I guarantee you if there's a letter that comes out that says, please don't do this, you're making things worse for us, the only conversation the liberals will have is, look at all of these people coming from out of town being against what the community itself is asking for. And they will say, look, this is not us, our opinion. We just only want to care about uplifting the most oppressed voices, right? But because it is the opposite case, where the people inside want something different, you'll never hear the liberals talk about what the people inside want, what they care about, what their perspective is. Because they don't care. All of that was a means to an end. Every time they bullied you by saying nationalized healthcare doesn't solve racism, they don't care about racism. They just wanted to bully you. And that exposes this. It's like, I thought you all cared about the powerless, the voices of the disempowered. That's what this whole political project is based on. So why aren't we talking about what they think? We shouldn't even be having a conversation about what we think. We should only be asking ourselves, what do they want us to do? Right? Whether we think it's foolish or not is irrelevant. But that's not in the discourse at all.
Okay, well, that was a lengthy, horrible headlines that I hope was helpful in getting a rundown on what's happening at Delaney Hall and getting your adrenaline pumping with some JP anger.
Do you have a recommendation for people on what they can do?
Well,
besides go be a person who comes from out of town? And,
I mean, if you could, they're asking for people. I mean, they are asking for people to keep eyes on the detention center, which means put your body down there. I have a couple of recommendations, or at least accounts to follow to keep up with the information. I think the one of the problems here is that people don't know what's going on, and there is a huge cover up. So I think what you should be doing is talking to people about this in your life. Democracy Now!, like I criticize some of their coverage and I stand by that criticism, but they are doing headlines on it every day. So if you want just the headlines, Democracy Now! Is covering it, and you should absolutely be talking about this and with whoever you can. All the No ICE groups, there's like No ICE Philly, No ICE Baltimore, No ICE. Those groups are all doing pretty good social media content to cover it. The conditions, the people inside are saying that they want an in-person meeting with the governor at Delaney Hall and the attorney general, the immediate release of vulnerable detainees, including the elderly, pregnant, and young people with medical conditions. They want a real review of all immigration cases and habeas filings, and they want an end to the coercive pressure to sign self-deportation documents. Things you can do, there's a link tree for supporting the families, which we can put in the show notes. You can join the protesters. There's also the ICE out of Citizens. There's a whole bunch of actions against Citizens Bank, because Citizens Bank provides a lot of the banking and financial backing for these private prison complexes that are running these things. So that's another one worth looking into, is the ICE out Citizens groups. Also, you could look into where there's ICE detention centers near you, because there are ICE detention centers near you. And any of the mutual aid networks put up. The families with people inside need as much help as they can get, because they're trying to navigate like impossible legal stuff. And often like they've lost an income earner and stuff. So we can do some links for that too. Anyways, this special edition of Extra Long Horrible Headlines, Delaney Hall, is now come to a close.
Done and dusted?
Done and dusted.
Your powers will fade as you grow old. Your powers will fade as you grow old. You're on the make and you don't do regret. You're always out for what you can get. You think like a snake and you ooze like a snail. Let the trail go cold as you swallow your tail. With your low rent skills and your heart of flint, telling your tales that are unfit to print. You're all weasel words, backed up by the boots, obsessed like the rest, with a promise of loot. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old.
love you.